Welcome back to Juggling Motherhood, Work, and Everything in Between, a mental health discussion with three inspiring Black moms, Mae Lindo, Chioma Janelle, and Nicole Brown Faulknor. In this installment, the ladies discuss the challenges Black mothers often face in accessing mental health services and how to overcome them. Let's get into it.
One of the biggest challenges that I think Black mothers experience is the lack of resources, but also the lack of resource to ask for a resource. Like, it's not part of our story to ask for help. And so oftentimes when we do have to ask for that help, there's fear of judgment, because we're living in a time where a whole system will take your children away. And so it's not like you can safely ask for help. You don't know who is going to take that information, what they're going to do with it. So then you rely oftentimes on friends who don't necessarily have the skill set to be able to hold that, and are also holding their own lives and their own trauma and their own whatever they're navigating as parents. And I find sometimes that all of that gets internalized, and the easiest emotional space to sit with is rage. Just be ragey, be angry, and then that becomes part of both the stereotype of Black women, but also their response to a system that doesn't see them or hold them or feel them in the way that they need.
And rage is a history of being unheard, because it gets so much slack. When you go, oh, ragey, it's like, well, they're expressing. Our bodies can only repress so much, and all rage is you will feel what I feel now, because it has been a history of being unheard. Now, anger and rage, two polar opposite emotions, okay? Anger is contained. It says, I can't let you do that. And I think as Black women, we do that a lot. And that gets misconstrued as rage. They say, she's violent, but that's anger. And anger is the only way we can protect ourselves. Okay? It is actually, here I come into psychotherapy, not even considered an emotion. Anger. Rage is. Anger isn't. Anger is an agent. It's a change agent to say, I can't. It's enough. You must see me. Okay? So let's, as I share, I like to debunk these things in the system. And like talking about the system is slavery. Okay? I'm going to debunk that. I can't just drop something like that and just walk away. You see, like, I have to give analogies. I have to give analogies in the spaces that I am in. Our bodies don't trust the system, because the system in our epigenetics, in our nervous system body, is memories of the harm done. And so there has not been a pause for us to feel safe yet in there, because the system wasn't designed with us in there. Okay, and the system doesn't have the tools or assessment tools that assess for our bodies in there. And so that's the distrust of the system. It is an analogy of the harm that was done to us, and there hasn't been a pause to say, oh, we're okay now, we can come in now. That's the plantation. That is slavery. Those are owners. We don't know. And so we need spaces so that our bodies can know, like, you're in here now. Here's an assessment tool for you. I have to ask you a different question coming in. I have to ask you, have you had a death in your family in the last year? I have to ask you, have you lost anyone in a relationship or anything? Because your body's designed for survival, so you'll go in and say, how are you doing? I'm good, I'm fine. Oh, yeah. Okay, so we have to ask different questions, because our bodies tolerate and understand things differently. And as soon as I ask that, I say, oh, you're overwhelmed. Because they'll say, oh, I moved. Yeah. 3 times. Oh, see? Yeah, so we have to ask questions in our assessment tools. In our medical system and all other systems, okay? Now we're in there. Then we say, slavery's done. Okay, we're okay, we can come. Makes sense?
I think it's funny too, because like the biggest thing, and I think this kind of talks to your point, is some of the challenges that I felt is like, where is like the culture or the component that like looks and recognizes this is the value that I have in raising my kid. So when you come with your agenda on how I need to raise my kid or how I need to like parent, and I know there's things that like I carry on from like the past generation, like my grandmother or like my dad's family that instilled, I still want them to have that. and I don't want that to be stripped away from them. So when you're like, okay, this is how you need to like parent differently, or this is how like this looks like when you might be like disciplining a kid or like redirecting some of this energy. Like I know my daughter, when she was in school, she had like challenging behaviors, and like the school system was like, okay, well, she's gonna get suspended, or like you need to like have these conversations, or there was a racist remark done to her and she like ended up beating up a kid, right? And it was like, well, this is not, her behavior is still not acceptable. But I'm like, where's the cultural understanding here? Like where is like, how do I support her and you don't have that cultural understanding for like me? And like I don't trust that now, right? And again, it comes back to that ideal of like the system is slavery. Like it doesn't have that space for one to say, okay, this is actually the meaningful resources that I need, and I don't want to ask you because I don't trust you. Like you're gonna do more harm than you're gonna benefit, because I recognize even now some of her behavioral issues was her being a leader and not having the appropriate outlet to like be that person. And I had to figure that out from like literally other Black women that I seen like embodied what I wanted to embody as parents. So it was really like, again, how do I have to be resourceful and have that extra layer of thinking of, I need to create my own space now. Like, who are the older mothers around me that I'm like, yes, you got this. I see what you're doing. Can I borrow this advice? Or like, this is what I'm going to. And if I didn't have that, or if I couldn't find older women, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I don't know what I'm gonna do right now. Like, this is like ridiculous.
And we have to be careful how we label challenge. My child was challenging in the system. Again, I'm speaking culturally, I guess, as a system. I have to represent the system. And I'm in the system a lot, and I have to do this amplifying of voices for us, all as Black mothers and parents, okay? So we have to be careful of what we script as challenge, because someone says it's challenging, we have to destigmatize it and say, well, what is it exactly? And one of the things that I was watching TikTok. Okay, I'm found. Okay, and I'm like, okay, and there was something really powerful, and there was someone that said, so there was a Black man who was at an airport and he was watching this non-melanated child, right, on the windowsill, walking around and doing all these things, and there was a Black family beside, and they were making eye contact and just speaking through their eyes and no words, like, we wouldn't let our child do that. And then he came to an epiphany, and he was just like, in our story, in between, even our eyes speak, our bodies speak to each other, see? And we knew we would never let our child do that. But the deeper meaning is, that child who was not melanated and walking around and doing all liberated and stuff, they were like, oh, this is wonderful, look how free he feels. Our child in a Black body, in a melanated body, doesn't have that liberty because we weren't free. And so now we just keep scripting that, and we say, now that Black child goes up on that windowsill at that airport and be like, go take care of your child. How are you letting your child walk up there and do that? We have two different placements, so we must be careful of how we use the word challenging.
But the other challenge of the challenge is that the systems, because they are not made with us in mind, don't give us that space. So when you have your child in school and your child does something like literally defend themselves against getting called the N-word or being told that they're, whatever nonsense of racism happens, which is all documented, you get the phone call as the parent saying your child is in trouble. How do you balance it, which I think is what people are struggling with right now, because we recognize that the system will do the harshest discipline possible in that scenario. But if we have the non-melanated child who's a participant in that experience, who's said the N-word, who's done the thing, who's whatever, they're given care and love and space to change. Oh my goodness, you know what? You're a child. You didn't know. How did you learn that? Let's not use that language. Hugs and kisses off into the next day of class. Our kid is sent home away from school, taken out of the system, and we can interpret it as leadership because it is the kids defending themselves, and they must. But how do we now translate our new interpretation of that, our free, liberated, loving interpretation of what is happening and recognition of a system gone wrong, and have somebody in that system respond? Like that level of stress that we carry, huge.
I remember listening to someone who's like, as parents, what we do as Black parents is we parent our kid based on how we understand the system and making sure that like whatever consequence or reward is going to benefit them based on how we understand the system. So like, again, like there are challenges, but recognizing one of the things that we have is the strength of saying, okay, we recognize this, so we're going to pour into you in this way, so that way like you are set for success, or you're set like. And I remember this gentleman saying like, listen, I grew up in an African household. Like my parents would be like, if you're going to take a piece of meat from the pot, it's called stealing. You are going to get beaten, because the system is going to punish you way more than me correcting you at home, right? And I feel like those are kind of the pieces that we still like navigate through in terms of like parenting. And that becomes like even the challenge in itself, because we recognize, okay, cool, maybe your approach wasn't great, but there was validity in it, right?
Generational trauma is PTSD. It's like that's what I mean. We still have this displacement, this fear, which is trauma, PTSD in our body. So we're gonna parent from PTSD. It's like, you do that, they're gonna hurt you. Okay, so the healing, generational healing is very important. So how do we go into the school board and how do we do these things? Is we learn our privilege by uncovering that we've done something wrong. It says when I don't feel I do something wrong, I'm moving into my privilege. Oh, I can be here. And then you get to quiz the teacher. You say, what's made you so reactive? I've done it. I parent around my children's shame, where they feel like they're wrong. And I have no problem if they are wrong to say, yes, you are. And more often than not, they're not. So I get to say that I am not planting shame in them, which means to cover, like I am flawed. Something's inherently wrong with me to the core. Okay, so we uncover, we move back into school board, like he's going to be here today. I create that advocacy. With the more awareness that we have in our sister spaces, I come and create the advocacy. I say, he will be here. Until I meet with the teacher and I understand what this is about, he will be here. So meet, and they meet, and it's awkward. They all sit there, they bring this person, and the teacher that was picking on him. And I say, this is bullying. I'm teaching him to be bullied. It's not okay. So, you know, I love you. I met you. I love my son more. What are we going to do?